Why the ozone hole will be gone in 30 years. The ozone layer started thinning in the 1970s. For decades, scientists had been measuring its thickness. In 1985, they discovered a hole in Antarctic ozone. Ozone levels there had dropped by over 30% in a decade. Ozone is only a tiny fraction of the overall air. It's actually a lung irritant linked with respiratory disease. But there's a lot of it in the stratosphere. The ozone layer absorbs much of the sun's radiation. It deflects the specific wavelengths, called UVB. UVB radiation causes sunburns and leads to cancer. Most plants and animals also suffer from UV radiation. The ozone layer was thinning because of chlorofluorocarbons. CFCs were present in everything, from aerosols to refrigerators. They were cheap and effective in manufacturing applications. CFCs were building up in the upper atmosphere. These chemicals were non-reactive. Scientists assumed they couldn't be a problem, but as CFCs degrade, they break down ozone. The ozone molecule is made up of 3 oxygen atoms. The chlorine in CFCs reacts with it. Together they make oxygen and chlorine monoxide. Scientists had thought the process was naturally limited. There weren't that many atoms of chlorine loose. Centuries would pass until the ozone layer would collapse. An expedition took measurements in the Antarctic. They showed that the ozone was breaking much faster. The chlorine monoxide breaks down in the atmosphere. It releases the chlorine atom to break down more ozone. One chlorine atom can destroy hundreds of ozone molecules. The ozone layer would collapse by 2050. It would lead to collapsing ecosystems and genetic defects. But the world responded with consumer boycotts. The international community marshaled its resources. They mounted a campaign to ban CFCs. In 1986, the UN began negotiations. They came up with a treaty called the Montreal Protocol. The Montreal Protocol is signed by 197 countries. It's the first UN treaty to achieve universal ratification. The treaty went into force in 1989. There has been a huge investment in new technologies. The world started using hydrofluorocarbons. They endanger the ozone layer much less. CFC's production was brought to a halt over the 1990s. In 2023, the UN released a report. Nearly 99% of banned chemicals have been phased out. The ozone layer will return to its 1980 levels by 2040. Thinner Arctic ozone will recover by 2045. The ozone hole will be gone by 2066. That progress hasn't been without setbacks. In 2019, the hole became unusually small, but it grew again in 2020. It suggests not all signatories to a treaty are abiding by it. Keeping the ozone intact buys time to fight climate change. CFCs drove Arctic warming. In the 20th century, breaking ozone, they allowed more energy to reach the Earth. Replacing CFCs with HFCs had its own drawbacks. HFCs are potent greenhouse gases. They are more effective at trapping heat in the atmosphere. Today, scientists are trying to phase out HFCs as well.